Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is a game that exists, and that fact is enough to offend some people. What a weird time for RPGs. Japan was overflowing with them, and they wanted to share a few with North America too. At this point, North America had received 2 of the 4 available Final Fantasy titles, but the developers weren't happy with their sales. In an attempt to draw the Western world into the genre, Square developed the spin-off title Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. On the cartridge box, this game is described as an early-level role-playing adventure. This was first released in North America in 1992, almost a full year before its release in Japan. That was enough time for Japan to realize they were disgusted by this game, as they felt the need to call it Final Fantasy USA Mystic Quest. It was also the first Final Fantasy game that released in Europe, although it still didn't bear the Final Fantasy name there. And they couldn't just call it Mystic Quest either, because that was their name for the first Mana game. So they settled with Mystic Quest Legend. The main hero is named Benjamin. Before you begin, you can name him whatever you want, like rearranging it to Benny Jam. After that, you're immediately brought into the action. It's always better to start with drama. In the middle of the drama is a tutorial featuring the random guy on a cloud who I can't unsee as an owl. What better time to teach the game mechanics than while the cliff crumbles away? The walking is all automatic in this section, but when it's time to jump, the game wants you to take over. Jumping in an RPG? Now that is interesting. Surely we'll have some extra overworld action. Oh no, a monster. The first battle has that sudden whiplash feeling, and you're fighting a behemoth all on your own. Just attack every turn and win, and the old guy realizes you are the chosen one, when he had already told you this before. Then he leaves. Such humor. His role in this game is basically to show up and announce things that are convenient for the plot, then disappear with no context. You probably already expected to save the world because it's an RPG, and there's no satisfying explanation for being the chosen one. Square simplified this game in many ways, and a lot of people will tell you they oversimplified it. Instead of featuring a big overworld to explore like almost any other RPG, they opted for a world map like Mario games. The only thing I like about this is that it rules out most possibilities of getting lost. Otherwise, splitting the game into different levels like this takes away from the world building. Funnily enough, the first area unlocked is named Level Forest. It's suitable for learning the various interactions in the game, like pushing the rock out of the way so someone can get home. You can follow him back home to the town of Foresta, and he offers you his treasure if you can figure out how to get it. This puzzle is made possible by jumping, and this edition will feature heavily in future required puzzles. As for the rest of the town, this forest doesn't seem very happy. It's been put under a curse, and everyone has aged significantly as a result. Except for Kaylee and her mother for no reason. Similarly, Kaylee joins you for pretty much no reason. Does Benny Jam know Kaylee before this? She's noble for wanting to save her town, but if I were her, I wouldn't follow Ben so quickly. Now that we have a second character, it's time to talk about the simplified battle system. For Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, you can see all the monsters before you fight them. They just stand in place and often block your way, forcing a battle. I don't understand how surprise attacks are possible considering you almost always start the battle yourself. The battle scenes are from a different perspective, but everything still seems to be animated. The battle menu is not simplified well. Returning to a fully turn-based system simplifies things, but at the start of each turn you pick between the options battle, run, and control. This selection is pointless. I don't think I ran from a single battle because they're almost always required to move on. As for control, this toggles whether your second character is controlled automatically or manually. However, you can change this at any time throughout the game simply by pressing the Y button. And on top of this, in a Final Fantasy game where your party has a maximum of only 2 characters, they're set to auto by default. Japan really didn't have faith in America's RPG skills. I think I can handle myself, and I don't trust the auto function either. When selecting battle, you then have another menu, which should be the only one. This is your typical battle menu where you can attack, defend, or use a spell or item. We'll talk more about these later, but for now it's a lot of attacking. An alarming number of enemies are taken out with one attack. One monster who isn't taken out with one attack is the Minotaur. Minotaur. Effectively the first boss. He poisons Kaylee, who realizes he poisoned the forest. The only way to revive the forest is by restoring the Earth Crystal. Oh, Square, you had to do it again, didn't you? Elemental crystals in a Final Fantasy game all over again. Kaylee needs an elixir to survive, giving you 2 quests in one. Benny Jam sets off on his own for the Bone Dungeon. They wouldn't make you do the first dungeon on your own though, so they'll give you a character with annoying dialogue to help. Tristam claims he has the elixir, but he's selling it for 9,000 GP. He often makes fun of Ben, bothering him by calling him kid all the time. So instead of paying the impossible fee, an unlikely pair is formed, and now you can use Tristam's throwing stars. This snob thinks he's a ninja too. Now, overall, the dungeon design is something I like. I would like it more if there weren't so many forced battles. Outside of this, the action elements of the game do their part to make these dungeons more memorable than many other games' dungeons. Don't get me wrong, this isn't anything groundbreaking, but the puzzle elements are a nice touch. These aren't puzzles you'll get stuck on, so it's suitable for an entry level. You have environmental puzzles like the sliding sand in the bone dungeon, or something like pushing the ice pillars into place in the falls basin to jump across from above. The most engaging part of the dungeons is the integration of weapons on the overworld though. The player only controls Ben outside of battles and can also use his weapons during this time. He learns 4 different weapon types across the game, which you can switch between at any time using the L and R buttons. The axe is almost always the strongest in battles, but the reason I'm mentioning the weapon types is because of their impact everywhere else. The swords are the least interesting, with their main time to shine in the ice pyramid, poking statues to open doors. Axes are commonly used to cut down trees, which is also a factor with these fungi inside the giant tree dungeon. Claws allow you to climb certain walls, and this is later upgraded to act like a hookshot. Bombs blow stuff up, who knew? They're received from Tristram randomly, adding to his arrogance. There's another guy later in the game touted as the only person in the world who knows how to use mega grenades, and you learn them from him faster than you can blink. These replace bombs as an explosive, and now you can throw them a short distance. The music in this game takes a different approach to other Super Nintendo RPGs and plays up to the synth vibe rather than trying to go orchestral. Most of it is enjoyable, and those who played this game remember the battle themes in particular for bringing in electric guitar sounds and becoming rock anthems. Boss themes in other Final Fantasies also weren't this frantic, and I enjoy this. While we're at bosses, the first major boss is Flamerous Rex. Someone tried very hard to make an epic name. I appreciate the sprite work for the enemies in this game. Bosses are big and angry, and even regular enemies look intimidating. They go through different sprites as they take more damage, which is best seen in the bosses as a symbol of your progress through the battle. Most bosses also change their possible attacks when they reach a new damage threshold, and these sprites are an excellent and innovative visual indicator. Victory over Flamerous Rex leads to recovering the Earth Crystal, which in turn recovers the forest. Tristram gives you the elixir and is still a jerk about it, and as Kaylee begins her own recovery, it's time to visit the central point of the game. The Focus Tower was introduced by Old Guy on a Cloud in the tutorial, and every time you visit the tower for progression, Old Guy on a Cloud shows up again. He's as helpful as ever. Something Captain Mac all the time. The world map is split into 4 different sections accessible from different parts of the Focus Tower, all with different environments in relation to the elemental crystals. You wouldn't guess from the subtly named towns of Foresta, Aquaria, Fireburg, and Windia. I don't feel the need to take you through each of the locations and dungeons, but we still have a couple of key features to evaluate. Is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest a grind-heavy game? Not at all. That's partly because you have to go out of your way to grind for levels, but it certainly should not be necessary. Since there are no random encounters, this essentially removes grinding as a possibility. Exiting to the world map and re-entering an area brings back all the monsters, but please don't bother. Instead, for opportunities to earn more experience points to level up as well as money, the world map contains many battlefields. They're limited to 10 battles and you will get a prize for them. Usually, it's not worth it. I never cared when it was an XP boost, and money is next to useless in this game despite Tristram and Benny Jam's first interaction. All spells and battle gear upgrades are obtained for free. However, a few battlefields reward you with those upgrades, and there's no way to tell which ones are important. I wouldn't have sat through them all, but the spells in particular are rewards you don't want to miss. Benny Jam meets 2 more sidekicks, Phoebe and Ruben. All of his battle partners have multiple synths with you, and they always join with higher levels. Someone needs to explain how Kaylee is suddenly level 31 the next time she fights with you, when she's been resting since the beginning of the game. Phoebe's bow is a new weapon type not usable by Ben, functioning like Tristram's ninja stars. Now is probably the best time to mention how certain enemies are weak against types of attacks, and that's not just limited to magic in this game. Birds are weak against shoot attack, like the 2 aforementioned weapons, and tree enemies are weak to axes. Ruben's mace is considered an axe by the game. This is another example of a change that I like in this game, making me wish regular battles were more interesting. Or interesting at all, really. If you were so determined, you could brute force your way through every regular battle using nothing but your normal weapon attacks. It wouldn't be efficient, but the fact that this is an option says something about the strategy in this game, or lack thereof. You can save the game anywhere, and if you do fall in battle, you can simply restart from the beginning of the same fight. In fairness, I wish this was more common in the series. However, it's this option that makes the mindless strategy more viable. So many monsters are defeated with one attack anyway, at least from your second character. Benny Jam isn't always so lucky. Then again, I was even more bored when neither character could one-shot the monsters. To retrieve the air crystal, you need to take out Pazuzu. Pazuzu gets credit as a boss since he occasionally activates the Psych Shield, reflecting magic attacks. The monsters in his tower get no credit whatsoever. They always outnumber you 3-2 in battles and take more than one hit. So why not use magic? Because you should always save magic attacks for the boss, even Pazuzu, since the Psych Shield is not often in use. Getting through this tower is a slog. As mindless as the previous battles are in the game was more enjoyable when I was making quicker progress. The only way to regain magic spells is to rest in a bed, not available in dungeons, or use a seed. Seeds are ridiculously rare until the very end of the game, so I was afraid to use them in Pazuzu's tower. I had tons of refreshers instead of seeds, and refreshers are next to useless. In fact, I didn't use them once. All they do is restore temporary status effects mid-battle, with no effects out of battles. When all 4 elemental crystals are recovered, stuff happens with Otto from Windia making a rainbow road, and warp tiles to the ship dock. There's a slightly deeper explanation in there somewhere. After an entire game of hearing about Captain Mac from Old Guy on a Cloud and eventually others, Benny Jam finally rescues him at the end of the game. And it could not be more underwhelming. The developers were more focused on the final dungeon taking place immediately afterwards. Focused, get it? Because the final dungeon is connected to the Focus Tower. You could say this is a full circle moment, but whatever it is, I liked that it was connected to the Focus Tower. The dungeon itself also exceeded my expectations. The generic name Doom Castle could be improved, but I give credit to the soundtrack for successfully sounding epic. The dungeon dedicates the floor to each of the 4 elements once again, with upgraded puzzles which I mostly enjoyed. There's a boss at the end of each floor too, as a revamped version of the previous monsters holding the crystals. Then, of course, there's a final boss. His name is Dark King, and he's rather sentimental, especially because his weakness is life. This doesn't always work, so it's possibly a bug, but if you can hit him with life spells at the right time, he takes massive amounts of damage. You haven't been close to 5-digit numbers before this point, and life spells deal close to 20,000. He has a few different random forms that he can take with their own special attacks. Don't get me wrong, this is an interesting concept. It should be threatening too. It's a shame that he just doesn't understand the meaning of life. Maybe we should be best friends. This game's plot is so goofy that its biggest twists right at the end are honestly worth spoiling. Before the fight with Dark King, he reveals that many years ago he created the prophecy of a chosen one as a rumor. Benny Jam wasn't chosen after all, but he gets an A for effort anyway. And after the fight, Old Guy on a Cloud suddenly turns into a 5th crystal. The Crystal of Light disguised itself as an old man just to tell a rumor to some random boy in an attempt to save all the crystals. That's the whole plot of the game. The ending is fine, revisiting all the characters you've met. Pretty typical RPG stuff, and it ends with Benny Jam sailing away on Captain Mac's ship to start a new adventure. I don't know why his previous adventure would make him want more, but maybe his life was that boring beforehand. Overall, it's a well-rounded ending, and now we look back on a very strange game. As far as I can tell, it functions as it should. There's just that issue of whether or not it's any good. The most common opinion is that no, it's not good, and people are upset that Square felt the need to create this game. Is this game offensive? It shouldn't be. I think it was branded wrong, and rather than everyone's entry point to RPGs, it's more suited to a younger audience. It's significantly less random than other RPGs, the damage numbers are consistent. Personally, I found this to be a very bland experience. However, I can think of another RPG I grew up with and adored, while nowadays it's just as bland as this game. I know plenty of people loved this game when they were younger too, and in that regard the game did its job. When I look at the game fundamentally though, I don't see outstanding things, and the first word that springs to mind to describe it is mid. Compared with games of this time, things that elevate my score are the puzzle elements not yet seen in Final Fantasy, and the boss battles were more interesting than they get credit for. Therefore, my final score for Final Fantasy Mystic Quest will be 6.3 out of 10. If you're old enough to be using regular YouTube, then I probably can't recommend this game for you. At approximately 10 hours, it's shorter than other Final Fantasies, and that's too much for this game. There's still some enjoyment to be had from expanding the world map, and little satisfactions from the puzzles. Otherwise, this is unfortunately a relic of the past, outdated and boring. It has never been remade and was only re-released on the Wii Virtual Console, which has since closed down. Review scores from the time were also not as enthusiastic. Electronic Gaming Monthly recognized it as geared towards a younger audience, not for experienced players. While the ease was listed as a flaw, everyone was nice about the game, and their average score was a modest 7.25 out of 10. Nintendo Power printed a 4-page preview focused near the start of the game before scoring it a total of 14.9 out of 20 at the end of the issue. As for a harsher review that I can't read, here's Japanese magazine Famitsu. 5.75 out of 10 on average, dragged down by a scathing 4 from one reviewer. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the SNES, initially released in 1992? Leave a like to get 10 hours of your life back, and subscribe to tell Benny Jam he's important and refuse to elaborate. Old Guy's Cloud not included. As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self.
Oh, crumbs. Edgehogs? Come on.